Okay, so welcome officially to the She Training and Consulting. So I've had a lot of people ask me, well, Shanita, you do a podcast called She Works, you do essential oil and products called She Oil. So what is this She? So here in this She, it stands for Supreme Home Educators. And so what I'm finding is that a lot of people are really considering homeschool for a myriad of different reasons. And what I found was as a homeschooler, I was so new to this world. Nobody in my family homeschooled, and I really had no idea where to begin. And so it was definitely an undertaking. And I thank God that I had people who are willing to kind of walk me through. So I have a little picture here at the bottom that you guys can see, just for a little street cred, that I was featured on the show The Doctors, in their homeschool segment. We were talking a lot about building resiliency in children. And we also covered this topic as well on our podcast. So let's just roll right in. We're going to go in to our mission. And so the mission of She Training and Consulting really is just to assist those considering homeschool. It is a big undertaking. And for those who may have never considered it and are strongly considering it, I really wanted to make sure that you guys knew there was support available, there was coaching available, there was help available. And so that's really the basis of what She Training and Consulting wants to do, is to come alongside you to help you map out a plan for homeschool. Every child is different, every family is different, and there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And so for someone that's been homeschooling like myself for 12 years, I have a wealth of knowledge and expertise and things that I learned from bumping my head along the way. So our learning goals this morning is going to be just to kind of briefly go into why some people are homeschooling. There's a lot of questions. If you guys are following me on Facebook and Instagram, you saw I put a lot of posts up yesterday about the most commonly asked questions and curriculum, a schedule, and how can I work in homeschool, all of those things that we will try to cover today. All right, so a little about me. I am a graduate from the University of Maryland in Baltimore. I graduated in 2000 something with a master's degree in social work. Also a proud graduate of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, HBCU. There I did a dual degree program in sociology and social work. And the social work degree was from Salisbury University. So that is a little bit about me. And as you see from my education background, I was not planning to homeschool. I was planning to run people's services, create my own director of services. And I had my first child and all of that went out the window. And so one of the things that I learned is that we've all had a little bit of homeschooling in us, right? I guess you guys didn't realize that you all homeschooled at some point. Now, I don't mean the distance learning most of the parents were doing this past quarter, but you think about when your kids are born, right? You teach them language, you teach them vocabulary, you teach them their numbers, you teach them their colors, right? That's phonics, that's math. You teach them how to eat, etiquette. You're teaching them to eat with a fork, right? That's humanities, that's in social studies. So there's a part of us innately that always starts out homeschooling. And then just for whatever reason, careers or paths or just different philosophies, we kind of stop. But there's a lot of information that you give your children. And when it comes to academia, despite what people believe, it really is no different. So here's a little bit about me, familia. So this is my husband of 15 years. These are my children. I have a 14-year-old who is entering into high school, a 12-year-old that is entering into middle school, and then a 5-year-old who will be entering into elementary school. Now, full disclosure, my oldest will not be homeschooled next year. That is a big change in my house because we've always homeschooled. They've never gone to public, private, charter. They've never done traditional school. But this is something that we kind of really thought, we prayed about, and we really felt this was a great opportunity for her. So she's going into a specialty high school, which will allow her to do some very unique things at a young age. But it was not something that I considered homeschooling before. My background, as you see, was in social service, counseling, and therapy. And that was where I was well on my way to until my path got diverted. Okay, so let's get a little bit of clarity about the difference, because I've seen over the last 4 or 5 months since COVID-19 hit and schools shut down and parents were thrown into what people have been calling a pseudo homeschool. And so I was watching through social media a lot of comments about parents doing homeschool, and this is easier than they thought, or it was harder than they thought. And I wanted to provide some clarity, because what parents were doing this quarter was not homeschooling. I want to make that real clear. And it's not a knock to distance learning, and it's not a puff for homeschool, but I wanted to make sure parents had clear understanding that what you did, if you have children who were enrolled in traditional school, you were doing distance learning. And the difference between distance learning and homeschool, distance learning, you have no control over curriculum, assignments, tests. You have no control. All you're doing is following a schedule that is given to you. And I've heard from testimonies of different parents with some on Google Meet, some in using Google Classroom, some using Zoom and Hangouts, and it was just so confusing. And so I wanted to just kind of clear the air to let you know that is not homeschooling. That is distance learning. That is, you're in a geographical region, the teachers are probably close by, and you're logging in at a specific time that meets, your region. Now, remote schooling is also something that people were using the language universally with homeschooling. Remote schooling is you're living in Afghanistan and you're taking classes at the University of Maryland Global Campus, where you're not on the same time and distance and things of that nature. So that's remote schooling. Homeschooling, guys, is when the parent is the primary teacher, the principal, the lunch lady, the snack person, the nap wrangler, the fight breaker upper. Like, that is in its entirety is what homeschooling is. You get to select the schedule. You get to select the curriculum. You pick specialty classes or electives that you think are in your child's best interest. And one of the beauties about it is that you can funnel specialties around your child's interests. My oldest, who loves to bake, she is a phenomenal decorator. She's a really good artist who happens to like baking. So her creations are just out of this world. So we've been able to kind of pursue some things in the homeschool realm that we probably would not have been able to do had she been tied to a traditional school schedule. Now, things may change this coming school year. All right. So one of the top questions that I ask parents when they call me and say, "Hey, Shanita, I really want to homeschool because I have all these other reasons why." And so some people are really fearful of the COVID-19 resurgence, um, watching the CDC recommendations, watching your local district schools to see what they are trying to come up with. And it's very frightening for parents. It's unnerving. It is you're just not able to rest. And so some people are concerned that if they start back in the fall, when the regular flu season comes around, they're not really wanting to send their kids back to school. Another parent expressed concern that they don't believe that the teachers or administrators are able to implement social distancing policies. I mean, I saw a post from a friend this morning who said she was with her 4-year-old in the store and had to constantly tell them, put your mask on, stop touching things. So can you imagine a classroom full of kindergartners, first graders, second graders trying to keep a mask on all day while you're not there? So there's some parents who just have those concerns. With school shootings have arisen, a lot of parents have concerns about unsafe environments. Some students here recently, we see a lot of information on the news about children being targeted, some racial discrimination practices. Some parents don't feel like the information their kids are learning is culturally relevant to them. And then some people have religious and faith reasons. I'll tell you, one of the reasons that my family decided to homeschool is when my daughter was old enough for kindergarten, we sat and we thought about it. We are believers and we are very selective of where our children are and who they are around and who pours into their life. And we thought about it and said, under no other circumstance would we allow our children to be with a stranger for 6 or 7 hours a day, not knowing what that person beliefs are, what they're teaching, how they're being treated. And let's just be honest, guys, nobody is going to love, care, and protect and teach your kids better than you. So if you are in a position to homeschool, the biggest challenge for most people is learning to survive on one income. If you are going to choose to not work, outside of the home, if one parent is going to be the primary homeschooler, that is usually the biggest hurdle. And so if there are parents who come to me and they're already a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, my response is usually, hey, you guys have already crossed the first hurdle. The second hurdle is usually getting one parent on board. Usually I find one parent is for it and the other parent is like, you're gonna mess them up, let's not do that. And so I've seen both sides. And eventually, being patient with your spouse if they're not quite on board with you, or you're the spouse that's not really feeling it, just take some time and just be a little bit more patient. My primary reason for homeschooling was more religious and faith-based, and wanting to make sure that I was the one instilling character and building resilience in my children. So that was a little bit of my story. But whatever your why is, because you need to know your why, because when it gets hard, and I'll be the first to tell you, raising both hands, there are some days that I was more exhausted homeschooling than I was running a domestic violence shelter for 50 families and running a family shelter, a homeless family shelter that had 90 families. And there were days with homeschool because you're on from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. And it takes I would say a few years. It takes a few years to kind of get a good flow, but I'll tell you, it's been all worth it. But finding a community is going to be essential for you. So if you look at the PowerPoint, you see all the people on the the left side with the big check mark, right? That's what you want. You want to plug into a homeschool community. You want to find a mentor. You want to find people that have done it before you so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? When I have issues with taxes or financial things, I'm not going to sit here and try to figure it out myself. I'm going to call my CPA. I'm going to find someone who knows a little bit more about the topic than I do. But what you don't want to do is try to walk that path alone, because that's a very lonely road and it's going to be a lot of questions that you won't have the answers to. So finding a community is essential. All right, now the first big question that we see is, what about all the curriculum choices? Now, this doesn't even break the bank on half, a quarter, an eighth, a 1/16 of what it is out there in the homeschool world. When I tell you there is tons and tons and tons of curriculum, there's so much curriculum that you will overwhelm yourself trying to find the right curriculum. There is no right curriculum. The way that I encourage parents who are new to homeschool to choose a curriculum is based on what your child's learning style is. What does your child thrive off of? What gets their attention? What type of learner are they? Are they more hands-on? Then they may prefer a more Montessori type curriculum where it's a lot of touch and feel. If they are more of a nature buff and they want to be out in nature. So you can't answer the question about picking a curriculum until we've done some research about the type of learner. But when I tell you there are unit studies, there are box curriculums, which means that they send you everything, all subjects for that one grade, and you pay a fee, and they may give you a schedule assignment. So that is a little more like distance learning because someone else is setting it up for you, but it's still considered primary homeschool. There are some people who are a little more eclectic and want to piecemeal some stuff together. So I may want to do a Becca math, but I may want to do Starfall and reading eggs for my phonics or hooked on phonics. So there's tons of ways that you can do it, and there is no right way. There is no wrong way. It is the way that works best for your learner and what's working best for your family at the time. I remember when I was doing math with my children, I was using a particular program, can't recall the name of it, but it just wasn't working for me. It wasn't in any kind of order. It didn't have kind of a spiral effect where the concepts builded upon each other. And I was just like frustrated, and I changed mid-year, and I found out a year later that in my changing mid-year, there was some things that were being taught in the one that I dismissed, that I missed, that we had already passed in the new curriculum. So you'll find that there may be some gaps. And guess what, guys? It is perfectly okay. You are not going to mess up your kids if you homeschool. And you don't have to know every subject as an expert. I put up several posts, if you guys are following me on social media yesterday, about outsourcing. I am not a science guru. I have done it for the little ages, but as my son now is in middle school, I am outsourcing his science, and we are joining a co-op for that particular class, because guess what? You can do that. So you don't have to be a master at physics, science, math, social studies, art. You don't have to do it all. And I think that's the misconception. People who are really just don't understand how homeschool works. Once you plug into a community, you see the network, it gets smaller and smaller. And so you begin to see what is available to you. Now, the second most important question as I get is, like, where do I do this in my house? I have a small apartment, I have a small townhome. When I first began homeschooling, I only had two children at the time. We had a 2-bedroom house, 1 bathroom, 1,100 square feet. Some of you guys, if you have an apartment, it's probably bigger than your apartment. Your apartment is probably bigger than my house. And so we did all of our homeschool right at the kitchen table. So if you look at the myriad of pictures that I'm showing, some people are at their kitchen table. Now, some people are real traditional and want to go buy desks, and that's fine. Whatever is going to work for you. I've done it always. We have done school outside when the weather is permitting. I'm like, everybody take your books, go outside, because I've had enough of y'all today. So I'm going to be real with you guys. I'm not going to act like it's all roses. There are those days where you're just like, I need you to be outside and do your schoolwork. But if you want to get desks, it's perfectly fine. But I will warn and say the biggest mistake that I see a lot of new parents make is that you try to replicate school at home. And that is not homeschooling. So there's a learning curve for you and the student to unschool, to kind of unlearn things that you have already learned. Because when you think about homeschool and you think about, and we'll get into schedule, I think in the next slide or two, but when you think about the schedule and times that it takes to complete a lesson, you really don't have to spend 7-8 hours a day. All right. Now, I would recommend you have some kind of central station where you keep a lot of supplies. This one here is called a homework station, but you always just want to have, basic supplies ready and available. And I'll tell you, the Dollar Tree around this time, y'all need to go before the teachers go, because they wipe everything clean. All right. Now, another question I get from a lot of my professional working moms is, can I work and realistically still homeschool? And I will tell you the answer is yes, and it depends. And so, yes, because I've done it. I've worked part-time, I've worked full-time, I have worked independent contract work. I'm self-employed now. So I've done the gamut. And some of my positions were primarily remote. So that really worked in my favor. So it depends. Do you have good time management skills? Do you have a support system? Who can assist you when you have to physically go into the office? In a former homeschool program that I directed, I had 3 or 4 government workers who worked for the government full time, but they had telework days 2 and 3 days a week. And so they would sit in the back of the homeschool co-op, and they would kind of just quietly be on their computer while the tutor was teaching, again, outsourcing the classes. And so you have to figure out how to set aside time to get your work done, and then to also help manage and plan and assist with their schoolwork. It also depends on the ages of your children. If you have a bunch of littles, it may be a little hard to try to work full time in homeschool. Maybe you have to switch to part-time. Again, my career path was social work. A lot of it I could not do remotely, so I kind of changed my career, still in my profession, and did more quality control, grant writing, and things like that I could do from home. But I could no longer see clients. So you may have to consider maybe a complete career change, or maybe a shift to make it work. Creating independent work boxes is something that I see a lot of parents do, that helps maintain your sanity while you need to get things done. So it can be done a myriad of different ways, or guys, it can be done like this. So this is my comic relief, right? There are times, I cracked up laughing when school shut down and we were seeing a lot of parents post pictures like this. Now, She Schools does not condone taping down children. It's just for comic relief, guys. But you see this parent is diligently working on the computer, and he just needs the kids to sit down. And as our brother Malcolm X said, by any means necessary. So sometimes it may even look like this, just sending them away or giving them their tablets so that you can get a few things accomplished. But no matter how it gets done, just knowing that it can be done. It can be scary, it can be nerve-wracking. I tell parents, imagine a 5,000 piece puzzle. when you see the outline of the box, you see a picture of it and it says, oh, okay, it looks really nice. It looks, I can do this. But then let's say someone took the box and threw it away and just gave you all of the 5,000 pieces of the puzzle. It will be really hard to try to put that together without the framework, right? Without a model to look from. And so when you get the model, when you have someone that's in your corner kind of outlining, like helping you with regulations and requirements, helping you understand the difference between a portfolio review or going with an umbrella program for your supervision. So there are some jurisdictions that will require that, some will not. Most do. But it's just helpful to have a framework. So once you see the framework, right, you see the outline. When you're putting a puzzle together, you start with the borders. And once you get the borders and your outline together, then you start filling in the pieces little at a time until you have your complete picture. So I wanted to really just encourage you guys today that it can be done. It most definitely can be done. And I'm here to help. So the last question we're going to cover today here is, what does a schedule look like? So this is a big one. And I get a lot of questions about this because if you're a type A personality like me, you want things structured and in order. And I can tell you, I've done all of this. I've done a block schedule. I've done leisure schedules. For my 5-year-old who is in the early stages of reading, we definitely use pictures to help her understand what's first, what's second, right? Helping her understand those ordinal numbers. But I've done a myriad of them all. And guess what? You're going to figure it out. What works for you? Try it. You're going to find this out by trial and error. So how you start off, if you need to make adjustments and go back to the drawing board for a different type of schedule. I know there's another homeschool family that I'm very close with. They use a lot of block scheduling and they do a lot of life skill chores in the morning. So for me, I know after lunch, that's our chore time. And so now we're kind of in a more relaxed summer schedule. So between the hours of 9:30 and 12:30, they have chores, they have work, they have math, they have coding, and it works. And so at least for 3 hours in the day, I can get things done like this. So it really does depend on you all and what works for you. Sometimes there are just different seasons of your life where things are busier and you have to make those adjustments. Um, so these are definitely the top 4 questions that people have been asking me over the past 6 months. And so again, if you are looking for more personalized help, I do have a homeschool support tier program that offers a 2-hour webinar. And it goes into great detail of how to get started. We dig through laws and regulations. We go through the 6 different types of learning styles. We go through the 7 different types of learning modalities to help you figure out what it is what's going to best suit your family. I also provide one-to-one mentoring sessions if you're planning to do a portfolio, or if you just kind of say, you know what, I don't want to do any of the tiers. I just want to be able to have an a la carte one-on-one session. We have that available too. Okay, so the homeschool tier, it's going to help answer all those common questions. This workshop was more just to kind of give you an idea of the services that we'll offer, which is why this was free. But the next tier will help answer definitely putting your feet down and getting started and finding that learning style. And finding what curriculum that you should select based on the 2 previous questions, right? Actually helping you to develop a schedule. And a lot of questions. I didn't see many high schoolers in the chat, the ages, but a lot of people have questions about, okay, my child is going into high school and my child is a very good athlete. What about sports and transcripts? We're going to dig into all of that in the homeschool tier. So again, the other tiers, they kind of are, they build onto each other. So if you are interested in learning more about the tiers, please give me a call or an email, or you can sign up on the website just saying you want more information. We can help guide you to select the tier that best suits your needs, and we can discuss more information and pricing and how that all is set up. So I am so encouraged that you guys were with me today. Thank you all so much for participating, and I hope this has answered just those preliminary questions. So I really, really appreciate you guys coming through today, and I hope to hear from you soon.